Alright, when you're working with parts and whole fractions, there's three different ways you can do problems like this. But first of all, let me show you what a problem could look like. When you're dealing with parts and whole fractions, I could write something like this. 2/5 of 20. I would want to know what that number would represent. So if I'm taking 2/5, you know that your answer has to be less than 20. I want 2/5 of 20. If I had 5/5, that would equal 20. That would represent one whole. But I only want two. So the first thing you can do is you can look at your 5. And you can write the word draw next to your 5. Okay, so you just wrote the word draw next to your denominator. Alright, now you could write the word circle next to the 2. And now you have circle next to your numerator. And then with 20, I want you to write dots. Alright, so we now have draw, dots, and circle. The first thing I need you to do is draw 5 circles, because that's what our denominator tells us to do. Then you need to place 20 dots inside your circles evenly. So you have to count very carefully. If you have 5 circles, you have to place 20 dots in there evenly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I now have 20 dots placed evenly in my 5 circles. Then the last thing, we've done draw. We drew 5 circles. We placed 20 dots. Now you have to circle 2 of them. And the dots inside here will be your answer. So you know 2/5 of 20 is equal to 8. And 8 is smaller than 20, so there's your answer. Alright, so that's one way that you can do it. Another way is the way that I'm going to show you in 5th grade. And then the final way is, I would say, the middle school or 6th grade way. So let's take our same problem and let's look at 2/5 of 20. Now, if we look at 2/5 of 20, I've always talked about how you have to have a numerator that's equal to a denominator when you're finding certain equivalent or simplifying fractions. So, if you take a 5, how does it get to a 20? And we're always going to use multiplication here. We know that 5 times 4 equals 20. But you also have to have a times 4 on top. So if 5 times 4 equals 20, we know that 2 times 4 equals 8. And that's our same answer. Alright? And the last and final way I'm going to show you is a little tricky. Let's take our same problem. 2/5 of 20. Alright? Now, in math class, eventually you're going to learn that of is the same exact meaning as multiplication. Whenever you see the word of, it means times. So let's go ahead and erase this of, and let's put a times. That still says 2/5 of 20, or 2/5 times 20. You cannot times a fraction by a whole number like this. You have to turn 20 into a fraction. And whenever you have a whole number, it can be written as a fraction by just taking it, turning it into a numerator, and then your denominator will be 1. I just said 2/5 of 20 is the same as 2/5 times 20 over 1. Now, you're going to take your numerator and multiply your numerator to get your new numerator. Then, you're going to take your denominator, multiply it by your denominator to get your new denominator. And I know that 40 over 5 is my new answer. However, 2/5 of 20, or 2/5 times 20 over 1 equals 40 over 5 is not an acceptable answer. You have to do the formula that we've always talked about when we're changing fractions to decimals, and your numerator goes on the inside, and your denominator goes on the outside. So let's put our numerator on the inside, our denominator on the outside, and we now have 40 divided by 5, which I think we all know equals 8. And if you solve that out, you get no remainder. Your final answer is 8. 2/5 of 20, or 2/5 times 20 over 1, equals 8. These are 3 different ways. You can use whichever way that you would like that you're most comfortable with.